All right, so let's do a news of the day type video to start off our day, and it's including some stuff that I was gathering up yesterday, which I was like, well, I'm not gonna fire up the camera and everything for this, but there's some stuff here to discuss, including a Nordiques logo on the board. What? Anyways, Cameron Hillis has signed an entry-level contract with the Montreal Canadiens. He was the number 66 pick in 2018. And for Guelph this year, he had 83 points in 62 games. So we'll see how things work out. He was the number 66 pick in 2018. So we'll see how that adds to the depth for the Montreal Canadiens and how long it's going to take before he gets a glass of water at the NHL level and we get to see what he can do. Interesting note that came out yesterday. So the AHL announced that they were canceling the rest of the season in the playoffs, and on exit interviews and in general, teams are telling some of the players to continue to self-isolate, to be ready, because the NHL is still making up its mind on what they're going to do. And the frustration from the players I get, and the frustration from fans I get, that it's been 2 months now, 2 months today. And here we are still talking about when, if, what's going to happen. And I understand people want certainty, and there's definitely lots of areas in our lives right now we'd like some certainty. And so I get it. But I do think we're going to start to see that certainty come into focus this week. I think this is the week where that happens. Now, Jack Dugan, a 2017 fifth-round pick, signs with the Vegas Golden Knights. He decides to turn pro after a sophomore year at Providence College, and he had 52 points at Providence College. So Vegas apparently is pretty sold on this kid's potential. He's 21 years of age, so maybe he pushes for a job as well. And if a 2017 fifth rounder can come in and push for a job, it can show just how strong their program is, not just when it comes to drafting early, but drafting later. And that's really what decides the strength of a staff when it comes to the scouting and the drafting part of it, is being able to get those guys in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. We always focus on the first round of the big star names, but very often it's that scout that can say, hey, get this guy in the 4th round, he's going to be good for you. The other scouts aren't watching him, I am, and I know he's good. And it's very often those conversations that seem to tip the scales when we look back 10, 15 years later at the draft and see who did well. Now, this is going to cause some consternation. I already saw this on Twitter this morning. This is causing some consternation with some fans. The Avalanche, for their 25th anniversary, partly because Carolina did it with Hartford, they're considering wearing Avalanche jerseys. And Carolina's already tweeted in response to this with, we'll bring the Whalers jerseys, which means you could see Whalers jerseys against Nordiques. And that would look fantastic out there, especially if it was a green Whalers jersey and the bright blue Quebec jersey. So you could still tell which team was which on the ice, and the game would just look fantastic. Now, of course, most of the responses to the tweet that I saw were, just put the team back in Quebec. We need the team back in Quebec. We need the Nordiques back. And I get it, but you need to have a billionaire owner, and you need to have somebody who's able to part with $650 million US on this side of the border. And right now, Canadian dollars trading at about 70 cents US, so that's about $1 billion. So you have to find somebody who's going to pay $1 billion for the rights to have a team, and I don't see that happening right now. So I do expect some pushback from some people, but I have wanted an Avs throwback to the Nordiques, and they even said, they haven't really done anything when it comes to that part of their history, but they were looking at what Carolina was doing and saying, we could probably do that. And, of course, with New Jersey, I mentioned when I did the Jersey video there a few days ago, that the stripes they currently use are a throwback to previous cities, to Kansas City and to Colorado. So it is kind of an homage to their previous history. And we'll see whether or not a Nordiques Adidas exists next year. I would think for money reasons that would be a great idea. And I would think just for how good would that look? Anyways, I'll leave that aside, but I think it would look pretty darn good. Now, interesting news here. The Los Angeles Kings have agreed to part ways with Mike Futa, who was their assistant general manager. Now, what's interesting about this is he has been viewed as a future general manager in the NHL. So is this a matter of him wanting to expand his horizons, or is this a matter of LA looking in another direction? Either way, immediately, because I was looking at a Sportsnet article regarding this, it turns into, well, better than Judd Brackett with the Canucks. Yeah, messy divorces with the Canucks are the way of things, and that's how things work. But it really isn't related to this with the Kings. It's so weird how people will turn an article on almost any team in the league into something about somebody else. So, anyways, hopefully this is a situation where he's able to move up and get a shot at a GM job now, and we'll see how that turns out. Because there are definitely some GMs that have to be on the hot seat, right? Now, the one thing about the AHL, and this is something that was revealed in an article yesterday, is 75 to 85% of AHL revenues, depending on the team, are gate revenues, and most of the rest of it is from sponsorships. Now, the sponsorship money may still be there, but I know from being a YouTuber that ad revenues are way down. Ad revenues are, and this is across the board. So that's going to affect leagues as well. Is that they do make money off their sponsorship deals, and without those, if a company's saying, oh, we're not advertising right now, it's going to eat into their ability as well to make this work. The one thing I did like was that Utica is trying not to lay off any staff. So they've been doing their best not to do that. Robert Esch has been very vocal about wanting to keep everybody on and do the same in the fall. Even though the AHL has no idea how next season will work, they are trying to figure out a way to make it work, because if fans can't be there, the AHL doesn't work. It doesn't. And the NHL putting money into it, yeah, they might, but the NHL, if the NHL isn't able to make the money either, see, this is where it gets interesting. And then if the NHL would put money in to subsidize the leagues that are further down, does that hurt the salary cap? Does that mean, well, we have this extra expense now, so we're gonna yeah, things could get really ugly with all of this. And so I understand there's some AHL players that are kind of left up in the air with what's going to happen, and not necessarily wanting to continue with the whole self-isolation thing. And yeah, I can't imagine that 2 month period has been fun for them. So it's just going to continue. Um, 2019 sixth round pick signing with the San Jose Sharks. Timur Ibrahimov, I'm going to guess, unless the G is pronounced like an H word, to be Ibrahimov, but I'm going to say Ibrahimov, signs his entry level contract. And so we'll see. They're apparently sold on his ability to jump right into the lineup and play right away. And certainly San Jose needs prospects that can do that. They need players who are going to be able to play for them right out of the gate. So we'll see if that happens. I did notice today on Twitter as well, for the Buffalo Sabres, they are advertising that Ryan Miller's auctioning off game-worn items for charity. So this is going to 3 different charities, which is for all we're dealing with right now. So it's nice to see, and I will leave a link to that in the description for this video, so anybody who might be interested. Of course, part of what's going on too right now is that there are a lot of auctions. There's a lot of charity things going on, and yet with jobless numbers being where they are, the number of people who are able to actually bid on these kinds of things, the number of people who have that kind of income where they can provide that kind of money to charity, it's going to be smaller than you would see in other years, and it's going to keep going down the longer that everything's shut down. Now, interesting note that came out, and I may have something to report later today, because we'll see if anything comes out of this. I think this is the week where something has to. The Return to Play Committee was having a meeting tomorrow. That's been pushed up to today, this afternoon. And then an interesting aside is that tomorrow, Gary Bettman is scheduled to meet on the phone with John Horgan, Premier of BC. So one thing that's been talked about a lot is, well, they can't do anything because the borders are all closed. But this is where commissioners talking to politicians and people in charge helps. And I'm sure that there's been talk about, bringing players back from Europe and how that would work, and work visas work. There have been reports of people coming into both Canada and the U.S. from overseas to help because they're on work visas. It's a different situation, sure, but it's still a work visa situation. So I would imagine that there will be something set up, and we'll see what happens from here. The fact that it got pushed forward to today from yesterday, and that Bettman's scheduled to talk to the Premier of BC tomorrow, tells me Vancouver is very likely to be a hub city. Vancouver is in really good shape. The numbers we hear every day have been really pretty darn good, and the Whitecaps are set to practice in Vancouver as well. So some restrictions are being lifted here locally, and so it would make sense to me if Vancouver was one of the hub cities, and Edmonton as well stands out as one. So that if you're looking at a position where there's going to be a division in each city, that's 2 out of 4 down right there. So that'd be half the league right there. And if it's going to be jumped straight into the playoffs, which makes the most sense, just jump straight into the playoffs so that every game means something right out of the gate, so that players will be more likely to want to come back. Just get her done, figure out your 4 cities, and go from there. And it definitely sounds like Toronto is in the running as well. And I know Toronto's had their issues along the way, but we'll see. I would not be entirely surprised if all 4 cities ended up falling into Canada. And because it doesn't matter where they play. Let's be honest, it doesn't really matter where they play. If fans aren't going to be in attendance, it doesn't matter where the games are. They could be in Timbuktu. It doesn't really matter because we're not going to be there. So that's really not important at this stage. What's important is making sure it's held as safely as possible. And one thing too that's out there is, and I've mentioned this before, you run the risk of being irrelevant. And if you say, we're going to shut down and just keep everything shut down until it's 100% safe, you run the risk of becoming irrelevant with other leagues starting up and other leagues eating into your share of the market. Where somebody who might be a huge hockey fan in one city might say, well, the NBA's playing right now, so I'll watch that. And then maybe they aren't as likely to watch NHL. Maybe your ratings drop just as you're going into needing a new contract in the States. I've said before, this came along at a time where it was the absolute worst case scenario for the NHL. Yeah, absolutely. The 100% worst case scenario for the NHL would be to have this happening right now. And that's just what they're dealing with, and they're trying to figure out a way to make this come back. And again, they're trying to figure out a way to do it as safely as possible. So, that being said, thank you guys so much for all your support. It's been an interesting 2 months. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And I will say that with the numbers that I'm seeing from the jersey video I did a couple days ago, there definitely seems to be an interest in the jerseys and going through the collection and finding some interesting tidbits in them. So once I've got the set redesigned at the end of this month, watch for more of that. And I'm going to have some fun with that throughout the summer. I'm not going to do the jersey countdown thing this year. I'm going to push that back to next year. And I'm just going to do more of the fun jersey type videos. But thank you guys so much for all of your support, as always. And hey, I will talk to you again soon.